Hello and welcome back to our ES6 introduction on freeCodeCamp. This is create and export fallback with export default. In the export lesson, you learned about the syntax referred to as a named export. This allowed you to make multiple functions and variables available for use in other files. There's another export syntax you need to know, known as export default. Usually you will use this syntax if only one value is being exported from a file. It is also used to create a fallback value for a file or module. Below are examples using export default. So here's a named function, export default function add, and here's an anonymous function, export default function, and does the same thing. Both are exporting this one value, and let's see, since export default is used to declare fallback value for a module or file, you can only have one value be a default export in each module or file. Additionally, you cannot use export default with var, let, or const. The following function should be the fallback value for the module. Please add the necessary code to do so. So, we're just doing the same thing, export default, and that should be good. Let's run test. We did pass it. I did open up this extra. Let me just read through it so you guys can see. In practice, there are mainly two kinds of modules or files. Modules that contain a library, pack of functions like say JS, which is this above file, but then there's a single entity, a module like user.js exports only class user, one thing. So the second approach is preferred so that everything resides in its own module. Mostly a second approach is preferred, like it says, so it's in its own module. Naturally, that requires a lot of files, as everything wants its own module, but that's not a problem. Actually, code navigation becomes easier if files are well named and structured into folders. So this is where export default comes in to make the one thing per module look way better, right? So here we have another example where export default, also this one value, it's this user constructor, and we'd be able to just import that, which would give us access to that value. So as it mentioned here, usually you'll use it if only one value is being exported. Here we seen this one value of the add function, but here same thing, it's just this one value. Exporting this default function would let us import it in another file. As long as you're understanding that, you're getting it, that we learned previously that we can export in like by naming individually, and then at the bottom like putting export and then the names of the functions that we want to export, or using export within the function declaration and just using the export keyword. You could do it that way. And now we learned export default, which, like it says, it's usually when you have one value, and it would just quickly give us access to it when we import it in another value. We're just really learning the different ways of importing and exporting. As long as you're getting that concept, then you're getting these lessons, and I'll see you in the next one.